so he's responsible for all aspects of professional development and instructional programs. Obviously, he's served in many roles. He's been a school designer. He's been the Northeast Regional Director, overseeing implementation in over 40 schools, and he does professional development in over 20 EL institutions. He is on the road quite a bit these days, and he does work all over the country. But beyond that, he's authored 2 books, one of which was our first assignment for this committee was to read An Ethic of Excellence, and his second book is A Culture of Quality. And so we've been really taking to heart what Ron's vision is in experiential learning and really quality schools. So we wanted Ron to be our first presenter here. We also recognize his 30 years of being with the Shutesbury schools and the quality of education that he brought to our children here, and we miss his presence greatly, but we know that a lot of what goes on here in this school has continued because of the work that he founded here. And so with that, I would like us all, and if the committee would like to go sit down.
I first have to say that perhaps the luckiest thing in my life is that I got to spend almost 30 years here. And I have to say that there's nothing I'm more proud of than the students that I got to work with here. And there are so many parents in the room here, of whom your kids are such points of pride. 5 members of this committee have kids that I was lucky enough to teach. So I do have very strong opinions about all those issues that were just up there, around where Shutesbury is going as a school, and where the region is going, and where the union is going. But my opinions aren't any more important than anyone else's on that. So what I'm doing is just a presentation for you about what I think is worth saving, what I think is worth preserving in Shutesbury, and I would add in Pelham and Leverett as well, because I am a deep fan of Pelham Elementary and Leverett Elementary. And I'll say right away that I am a staunch believer in small local schools and not in big regions. And I will fight for Shutesbury and for Pelham and for Leverett. But before we even get into the issues of fighting and collaborating and working together, I just want to remind everyone why this matters. Because the work in Shutesbury has had profound influence nationally, and I'm not sure you even know about all that. So I have been lucky enough to work with this nonprofit organization for 17 years. For the first 10 years, I was working with them and teaching full-time. And then for the last 6 years, I've been working full-time for this organization. We now have 165 schools around the country, which have a philosophical approach very much like Shutesbury School. And there's been a tremendous heritage of Shutesbury work spreading around the country to great schools. So really what I want to do is share with you why this stuff matters so much. And then I'll step back and just be involved in the discussion that the committee will lead, but I'm happy to dive in right away with strong opinions on it. First thing I want to say is I'm really thinking big picture here, and I'm going to talk about big picture education versus narrow picture. Big picture, I mean, what's the purpose of schools, and what do parents care about for schools? And narrow picture is how we're currently evaluating what a good school is, or what a good student is. So first, for what's the purpose of schools? I think across the political spectrum, there's probably a lot of agreement that the purpose of schools is to get kids ready for democratic society, to get kids to have the skills and values so that they can be good parents, and they can have a job, and they can be good citizens, and they can follow laws, and they can be good neighbors, and they can be kind contributors to our country. And I don't think anyone would argue with that. Unfortunately, that's not what schools are being measured about. Are they really getting kids ready for that? They're being measured on a very narrow thing. And in fact, schools are being measured only, at the moment, on kids' ability to take one kind of test at a certain point in their life. When once they graduate from school, for the entire rest of their life, they'll be measured by the kind of person they are and the kind of work that they do. but we're not actually measuring, is that what schools are getting kids ready for? Are they having kids learn how to be good citizens and good people, and are we teaching kids to do great work? Because test taking is a skill that kind of ends after school, and it's the only skill being measured to assess schools. The other big picture issue is, what do parents value in schools? And if you ask parents, and I'm not just talking about Shutesbury parents, I'm talking about parents in Springfield or parents in Chicago or parents anywhere, what do they care about in terms of the school their kid's going to? Test scores won't be the first thing they say. They'll think, well, I want a school that's physically safe for my kid, that's emotionally safe for my kid, that the building isn't falling apart but looks nice. I want a school where my kid feels welcomed and cared for, where there's some joy in the hallways, where my kid's going to be excited to learn, where she's going to get opportunities to do art and physical fitness and do great things, where she's going to feel like she's getting excited to be a lifelong learner. I want her to do science and math and reading in a way that she just loves it and gets good at it. And I guess I want her to get good test scores too. But that might be number 25 on the list of things that you first care about the school you send your kid to. But in the media, the only thing that matters is, does that school have good test scores? I'm not saying test scores are wrong or that we need to stop them. I'm saying that of all those 25 really important things, why are we only assessing one of them? And why are we only discussing one of them? And I'm also saying that it's a false choice that you have to choose between big picture and small picture. That you either focus on test scores or you focus on everything else that matters. Because that is an illusion, that you have to think about one or the other. You can't have both. Let me give an example. There are no schools that I value more than Shutesbury, Leverett, and Pelham in terms of the quality of personal attention to kids, the care for kids, the quality of work kids do. But when I was here for the first 20 years, I was told that the kind of work kids did here can't work in cities, can't work with low-income kids, can't work in those high-pressure situations. It only works because in Shutesbury, kids are there are a lot of middle-class kids, there are a lot of white kids, there are a lot of informed parents. They can do projects, they can care about culture, they can have community meetings, they can have Bob Mahler be the kind of principal who cares about the whole child. But when it gets down to the city, you can't do that stuff anymore. And I've spent the last 7 years trying to prove that wrong. And let me give a particular example. So I have a colleague that works for my organization, Expeditionary Learning, Mark Conrad. Mark, will you raise your hand? Mark is here not because he's my colleague, but because his daughter Lily is a second grader here now, as of this year. And he moved to Shutesbury because he wanted a great school for his daughters, Lily and Cedar. Mark founded a middle school in Baltimore, Maryland, that served almost 100% African American students of poverty. And in that school, every 6th grader, every 7th grader, and every 8th grader did portfolio presentations, just like Shutesbury students did. Every kid did project-based work. Every kid spoke about his and her work with that same articulate pride that Shutesbury kids did. The school focused on character and whole child work as much as basic academics. And yet Mark's school was also the highest performing school in the city of Baltimore across tests, with nobody close. The idea that you have to choose between good test scores and a school that does what really matters it's a fallacy, and it's a fallacy we can't let be. And I would also point out that now that Mark's a parent, he's somebody I would lean on as a great resource. He founded that school and was there for 5 years, and then he was a school in our network, and we lured him away and lured him up here. He took over my position as Northeast Regional Director, so he now has oversight over 45 schools in New England that are doing similar work. So in Portland, Maine, the school that has the best test scores as a middle school is a school with the same Shutesbury, Leverett, Pelham ethic. In Rochester, New York, the school with the best test scores as an elementary school, same thing. The same kind of whole student approach, caring about character, caring about project student leadership, again, the highest test scores. I think it's a mistake, and I want us to make sure that we don't get snowed by people who say, yeah, but you got to worry about test scores. We need to say, yeah, We do, but we have to worry about the big picture as well. So, hi Wilsons. Another example of parents whose kids are great sources of pride for me. And rather than just talk about it, I wanted to show you examples of the heritage of Shutesbury kids and what the work they did here and how it spread around the country. And I'm going to do that through slides. Before I do, though, I also want to acknowledge that we have 3 members of the Pelham School Committee here, including my friend Debbie Gould, who runs in the Shutesbury Coffee Cake Club, which is the running group that's central to my life. I still live in Shutesbury. I'm a Shutesbury Coffee Cake Club devotee. We have lots of gear that you see me wearing. And Pelham is a school, just to say right now, I am as vigilant in wanting to support Pelham as in Shutesbury right now, because Pelham is a fragile moment, even more than Shutesbury. And it is a perfect example of a school that has just about the highest MCAS scores in the state of Massachusetts, and a culture that is a welcoming, friendly culture where kids have joy in learning and inquiry, and that's a school that people are talking about closing. That stuff worries me. So Pelham itself is an example of a school that says you don't have to choose. They have great test scores and a great school culture. So this is not an either-or proposition.